So welcome everyone to our first ever Q&A session with the HR booth. I'm here today with my colleagues John and Alistair, and our aim today is to discuss some of the frequently asked questions that we've got regarding furlough and the job retention scheme. So the full details will be available on the website, and if you do like the video, please feel free to engage and send us any questions that you'd like covered in future videos. So yeah, I'll crack on with some of the questions to do with furlough that have been asked by clients. Obviously, the idea is that we get a bit of conversation going, and if there's any questions that we've maybe missed, feel free to comment below, or send us a message, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions. But just to mix up the format of having a list of questions there that might not be as clear as they need to be. So one of the questions that we've had from a lot of our smaller clients is, can I furlough myself as a sole director and or other directors within the business? So the first part I'll give to Alistair is, can I furlough myself as a sole director?
Yep, absolutely. That's something that can be done. The HMRC guidelines on that are pretty clear. I guess where there's more than one director, and if the business is still doing some activity, it's probably just being careful around that, because obviously if the directors are doing some activity that potentially generates revenue for the business, or they're doing what would be classed as work, my view would be to probably keep one director still kind of on the books as such, and furlough the rest, and that way you've just got someone who's kind of overseeing things, and that might be to kind of manage any of the teams that are still there, deal with customers, perhaps look at any kind of marketing activity, that kind of thing. And the good thing with the furlough scheme is that, providing you can have someone who is in the business, say, for a minimum of 3 weeks, and everyone else is furloughed for that minimum 3-week period, you can rotate that on and off. So it's a good way just to have a look at that. But if it's a sole director, so say it's a really small business and there's only one director, the answer to that is that you could be furloughed. The guidance on that is around that obviously a director still has to fulfil some of their statutory obligations, so that might be kind of filing accounts and some of the other obligations as a director. So providing that business isn't kind of performing any kind of work as such, and the director isn't doing anything that could generate revenue, then that business would be fine to furlough the sole director.
Okay, perfect. So the next question kind of ties in with that a little bit, but if you've got a couple of directors within the business, and you furlough one of the other directors there, what is the communication limits that have been set out? How much can I communicate with that other director if maybe I need help on a particular query? What is the main guidance on that?
I mean, obviously the directors who have been furloughed can't do any work, but I mean, I guess in terms of communication, they can participate in things like workplace training. They can participate in just general kind of communication within the business. So that's really up to the directors to agree what that communication kind of looks like. So as long as the directors who have been furloughed aren't actually physically doing any work, then that would be seen as reasonable. So just kind of establishing that communication contact within the realms of that business. I guess the thing to consider there is the size of the business might dictate that. So if it's one other director, then just agreeing a communication plan around that. If it's more than one other director, then it's just looking at the scale of that business and kind of who does what. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. Can my employees work for another employer during furlough?
Again, during furlough, your employee can work for another employer with your permission. This is what we're looking at. So if the permission, they would need to request in writing that they're going to work for another employer. Clearly, it's up to you as the employer to give the permission there as to whether or not that's granted. What it does remain, however, is that you are still the main employer for them. And if there is any change in the current situation, they need to make sure that they are available for work at any time if they were to come back again.
Okay, that's perfect. And can employees then start, if they maybe don't have two jobs already, is that the same rules apply for employees that maybe start a new job with a completely new employer?
Same kind of response, really, Callum. So yeah, that is permitted. Again, just providing that you kind of get permission from your kind of original employer that they're happy for you to do that. There might be a clause in the contract that says that you're not, but under the kind of current circumstances, you might want to relax that a little bit. So it's still up to the kind of main employer where they want to agree that. And I think the only thing that I would probably add there is you probably wouldn't want them working for a competitor. And obviously, if they are picking up a second job or another job during the period of furlough, anything that's kind of confidential around your own business is just to make sure that's enforced. So they shouldn't be kind of sharing anything relevant to your business whilst they're working for another employer.
Okay, perfect. It's great stuff. So what should I do with holiday entitlement has been a question that's been asked by quite a lot of clients, especially those with a large number of staff that maybe have a bit of worry about what they've got. Maybe John can talk us through some of the advice he's given on what we should do with holiday entitlement for employees, and can a business force employees to take holidays during a period of maybe temporary workplace closure?
You're right, Cam. This is one of the questions that has been asked quite frequently by a number of our clients. All holiday accrual still continues while employees are off on furlough. What has changed recently is that the government has brought in legislation where up to 4 weeks holiday now can be carried over in a 2-year period now, which sort of takes away the main fear that a lot of clients had, in that when employees started to return back from furlough, that the amount of time they would have to take their annual leave and to get their annual leave in would be so shortened that they would have issues around actually approving holiday. So clearly that has made a difference. As an employer, though, you do have the option of asking employees to take annual leave. Now, the big thing that we would advise there would be that you would give them sort of double the notice for the period of holiday that they're after. For instance, if they wanted to take a week off, if you wanted them to take a week off, you would give them 2 weeks notice that they would be required, obviously, to take holidays.
Okay, perfect. Can people take holidays during this furlough period?
Yep, so people can take holidays. What is a little bit unclear at the minute is just the rules around what should be paid. The official guidance is kind of silent on that at the minute, just around people being paid their kind of normal salary. What we kind of have seen through various kind of tweets that HMRC have kind of put out there, and also some of the ACAS guidance around bank holidays, because obviously I think there's 4 bank holidays during the period that the job retention scheme is in place. So our view on that is that if you've got an individual who wants to take holidays during the period of furlough, you would pay them their normal salary during that period of annual leave, and then the rest of the time that they're off on furlough leave gets paid at the 80%. What you then be claiming from HMRC is purely the 80% for that full month, or the full claim. If it's a 3-week claim you're doing, whatever that is claim that, but you wouldn't be able to get the additional holiday pay on top of it. But from what we can see, there's nothing to stop you paying the employee their normal rate of pay for that holiday. And I guess there's kind of 2 plus points around that. Is one, that the individual gets paid a higher rate whilst they're on holiday, and also from a business point of view, we've kind of touched on it, is that some of their holidays are then kind of used before the before the individual kind of comes back. And I think just on the holiday, I think we've touched on it already, but I think it's important to remember that you as the employer are the one that either rejects or approves a holiday request. So if you've got employees who are coming back to work and then all want to take the holidays at the same time, you're in control of that situation, so you can kind of decline that request or otherwise. And obviously, if you want them to then carry that over into the next 2 years, you can do so. So don't feel obliged to approve all these holiday requests when the restrictions are lifted. Your business is going to be important in terms of serving your customers and driving that forward. So it's important that you kind of make sure that's all done properly.
Perfect. Great. Thanks, Alistair. Perfect. That's great. Okay, so the question that we had planned next has actually changed a little bit overnight with a recent update. But it was originally around hiring an employee that started after the 1st of March, and what you know, the business is closing, we still want to retain that person on the books. What could we do about it? Maybe Alistair can pick this one up for me.
Yeah, so yeah, hot off the press, I guess. Then,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I guess one of the good things is we've been keeping a close eye on the kind of HMRC and the government guidance around furlough, and I think that's now the kind of fourth update that's kind of been made since the scheme was launched. So you're absolutely right. You know, originally when you know the Chancellor launched this in March. The rules of the scheme at that point were that you had to be on the payroll as of the 28th of February. So if you started after that, you wouldn't be eligible to be furloughed. And that's been the kind of rules right throughout. So it's meant that some businesses who had started an employee after that date, they weren't eligible to obviously reclaim the payment back. What's going to happen in the last couple of days is that the guidance on that has changed slightly, and what they've now said is that if an employee was employed on or before the 19th of March, they would be eligible to be furloughed. Now, a little bit of a kind of grey area, because in addition to that, what it also kind of means is that there also has to have been an RTI submission notifying HMRC that that person was on the payroll on or before the 19th of March. Now, my understanding is, and this is where it'll affect a lot of businesses and certainly a lot of our clients, where there's a monthly payroll and perhaps get paid on the 30th or the 31st of March, you'll probably not run the RTI submission on the 19th of March. So that could well mean that although the employee started, say, for example, on the 15th or the 16th of March, you might not be eligible to reclaim that money back if they've not been on the payroll as of that date in terms of that RTI submission. So we'll just probably wait for further guidance on that. But where that will benefit some businesses is probably where they run a weekly payroll. So, for example, if they've got someone who started on the 3rd or the 4th of March, for example, and paid them weekly, that RTI submission is going to have been done. So they're now going to be eligible for the scheme. But as I say, I think the issue will be probably people that are paid monthly, and if that payment date is the end of the month, it's possibly quite unlikely they're not going to be eligible. So key thing there is if you've got someone in that situation, just seek some advice before submitting a claim to HMRC to try and get that money back.
Okay, perfect. So the next one we have is around employees that are currently off their work, whether that be for self-isolation or they're shielding through government guidance. And one of the questions was on maternity leave as well. So the first question I've got for you, John, is one of my employees are currently off on maternity leave. Can they be furloughed?
Again, while employees are off on maternity leave, they are still entitled to their normal benefits and allowances that would have been in place prior to this. You know, so if they were eligible for statutory maternity pay, for instance, or maternity allowance, those rules are still applicable. What we'd be looking at, I guess, would be if an employee wished to come back to work earlier than the date they had planned. Again, if they were to give the appropriate period of notice. Yep. On there, you know, if they were going to give the 8 weeks, for instance, and then we could look at the options around furloughing from that aspect.
Okay, perfect. And then picking up on the back of that, Alistair, if we've got employees that are maybe self-isolating, what should we do? And the same goes to shielding as well. What's your advice on
yeah.
employees there?
Well, good question. So I think in the main, you know, the furlough scheme was kind of set up to protect jobs. So where there was a downturn in work, what the Chancellor was really keen to do was protect jobs and ensure that businesses weren't laying people off and making them redundant. What's obviously then since transpired is that some employees are perhaps needing to kind of self-isolate or, you know, kind of do the shielding, or maybe look after a family member, and they might want to approach their employer and ask if they can be furloughed. Ultimately, it's the employer's decision to kind of furlough, and I think you just got to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Ultimately, though, if a business decided to furlough someone for that very reason, then they can do that. They just need to be very clear, though, that, you know, that might open up the floodgates for other members of staff to come forward and make that request. So they just need to kind of be aware of that. Is that something they can accommodate? And obviously, if that's a role that still has to be fulfilled by furloughing someone, and they're then looking to kind of replace that role, and who else kind of picks it up. So there's probably quite a few kind of permutations around that. But ultimately, if the business wants to accommodate that, then yeah, absolutely they can do so.
Perfect. A few clients that we've got have had physical requests from staff to be furloughed for those reasons. But due to work commitments and being key employers in their respective industries, do they have to accept these requests in line with that?
No, absolutely not.
Touched on that already, but
They don't actually, and the reason being is if they've still got work to kind of fulfil and perform, they're not under any obligation to accommodate that request.
Yeah.
I think the government, UK government and Scottish government have been quite clear, so they want employers to try and do the right thing, and that's obviously something we're keen to support our clients with anyway. But ultimately, if that job still has to be done and there's nobody else to kind of do it, by furloughing someone or agreeing to that request, they're potentially putting their own business at risk to fulfil their orders, or whatever industry it is they're in. So they don't have to accommodate it, but certainly consider it if they can do. But there's no legal obligation to accept a request. Ultimately, it's up to the employer to make a decision to furlough, not the employee.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, it was a scheme set up to protect jobs, not to put people at home.
Mm-hmm.
So no, that's great. So the kind of other side of that then is, do I have to furlough employees, or can I make redundancies if I know that there's not going to be work going forward? My business is taking a real hit during the current climate. What's your take on that? Either John or Alistair. Go for it.
So again, with that, the government are recommending that employers do furlough staff rather than going down the route of making redundancies. Then again, what we're trying to look at here is to see how realistic will that be going forward? Is it something that can be sustainable? If there's not actually going to be any change in the sort of short to medium term there, then you can look at making redundancies. And the whole redundancy process hasn't gone away. It still has to be applied as things would have been prior to this furlough scheme actually coming into place. So by that we mean, a fair selection process would have to take place. And again, consultation hasn't gone away. The requirement to consult is still there. Again, if you are looking at making redundancies, you need to take into account length of service for employees, because obviously everybody over 2 years would then have the requirement for redundancy payments.
Perfect.
Yep, agreed. And I think the only thing to add to that is, whilst the scheme is set up to try and protect jobs, we know through some of the clients that we've been speaking to, when the scheme was launched, towards the end of March, and that was after a lot of the government guidance around businesses kind of temporarily closing. From a cash flow perspective, it's just not been viable for people to continue to pay staff wages during March and April. And the confirmations only just come out in the last week or so that the HMRC portal is going to be available on the 20th of April, and then payments made the end of the month. So potentially got businesses who have seen a huge reduction in trade during the month of March, still having to kind of pay wages during March and April. So putting them on furlough is just not viable, because there's just no cash to pay the wages and reclaim it back. So on that basis, some of our clients and other businesses that we know of have kind of made redundancies or just paid people off.
Okay, perfect.
I think just something else just to add on the redundancy side as well, and John touched on it just around kind of consultation. As we know, the job retention scheme is eligible from the 1st of March to the 31st of May. In actual fact, we're now approaching a timeline in the next couple of days, actually, where if it's employers looking to maybe make more than 100 redundancies, if they're looking to do that on or around the 31st of May, they're actually going to have to start consulting with staff in the next couple of days. It's a 45-day consultation period, and because we'll probably find out later today officially whether the restrictions are going to carry on, but there's no kind of specific details around the job retention scheme carrying on. So employers are actually at a point now that if it doesn't continue beyond the 31st of May, and also there's going to be no uplift in their trade, if they've got 100 or more staff that are looking to make redundant, they're actually going to have to start consultation in the next few days to comply with the 45-day consultation period. So that's something that's quite important for some of the larger organisations. And then for some of the smaller ones, even if they're looking to make more than 20 redundancies, it's a 30-day consultation period. So again, that's going to be here by the end of the month. So to comply with the legislation and the rules around redundancy consultation, that they're going to have to kind of have some answers on that very soon. Otherwise, it's going to kind of push that date out a little bit further as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep. Well, that's good bit of advice there.
Yeah. So space, I guess, on that.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're now moving on to another question that has been asked, and you kind of touched on that already, Alistair, about rotating furloughed staff. But one of the questions that I have spoken to a couple of clients myself about, and I know John's done the same, is that when we're talking about furloughing, a certain amount of staff within a workplace, and not particularly everybody, how do we go about selecting who to furlough? Do you have any ideas on the best way to go about that? Obviously, if we do plan on rotating that, what's your best advice on rotating the staff and who to furlough?
Yeah, that's fine. So I guess it's, whilst it's not exactly the same as a selection criteria around redundancy, you would still be looking at kind of some objective selection there, especially if there's people kind of doing the same job. How do you decide who's kind of furloughed and who's not? So that is perhaps just looking at things like kind of skill set, for example, maybe kind of flexibility in job performance. So you kind of know, well, that's someone we need to kind of keep, and the rest of the team we can kind of furlough. So that's kind of one aspect. Another one is just really around kind of key tasks that maybe still need to be performed in the business. So one that we know of is obviously like things like kind of payroll and month-end activities. That's something that still needs to happen, but you might not need someone in the full month doing that. So what you might do there is kind of furlough them for maybe the first 3 weeks of the month, then they come back in for a few days to kind of help process payroll, tie up anything around kind of month-end activities, etc. Make sure the wages are paid, and then they might be furloughed again. And you can kind of, providing you're doing that, a minimum of 3 weeks, that's fine to do. So it's probably just looking at the skill sets within the teams, and as I said, if there's more than one person kind of doing that role, just trying to kind of make sure there's some kind of fair criteria around it. It's probably quite straightforward if there's only one person in the business that's got that role. So say, for example, you've got say a kind of marketing assistant, and that's the only person in the business that's doing that. To furlough that person, there's no real kind of selection criteria because nobody else is kind of doing that role. So that would be pretty straightforward. But yeah, it's probably just looking at the skill set within the team, and the things that still need to kind of be performed whilst the business is still running.
Great. Okay. So on the back of that, then, John, if I do make that selection to furlough staff, what should I do if the employee doesn't agree to be furloughed?
If the employee does not agree to be furloughed, okay. Again, what we'll be looking there is you'll be looking at the sort of length of service they do have with you as well. As Alistair has sort of touched on before, if it is an individual with less than 2 years service, again, we could be looking at bringing their employment to an end. Again, looking at numbers like going through a consultation process. But if you're looking at the numbers of employees that don't agree to be furloughed, as we've touched on previously, you're then looking at going into consultation with the appropriate consultation taking place for the numbers affected. Again, as Alistair said already, if it's 100 or more, you're looking at a 45-day period, which again, we're getting really quite close to now, in line with the deadline for 31st of May for the CGRS scheme coming to an end with the furlough, if that's not going to be extended.
Yeah, and just another thing on that, Callum, is depending on what's in the contract of employment, you might have a kind of layoff clause. And with the layoff clause, you can actually kind of lay someone off for up to 4 weeks. The first week of that is a statutory kind of guaranteed payment, which is £145, kind of pre kind of first of March there. So a lot of employers were kind of doing that. So that might be one option, is that someone, if that's in the contract but they refuse to be furloughed, you might actually kind of then just lay them off for 4 weeks. In actual fact, they get 1 week where they get some payment, and then 3 weeks where they get nothing. So it's almost then that, when they look at it that way, they might think, well, in actual fact, I'm actually better being kind of furloughed. So again, a lot will depend what's in the contract of employment around that.
Okay, good.
So far, so good. We've not really had, I think, any kind of pushback, very little anyway, on that. And I think a lot of that's down to how we've advised our clients in terms of how to communicate the message and get that buy-in, even where there's not been a kind of layoff clause in the contract, just getting that consent. I think the approach we've used is definitely kind of worked, and it's been pretty successful up until now.
I think just, sorry, Callum, I think just on that as well, we have drafted up templated letters for our clients. And I think the feedback we have been getting from the clients is that the templated letters are very easy to understand. It's been written in such a way that it's able to get the message across to the employees and the whole message around furlough. And as Alistair's touched on, that the options that are there, it has been proven to be that furlough is clearly the best option at this time, as opposed to looking at the short-term layoff when, you know, for 3 months, it would be a 3-month period where they would only pick up that, as you said, around the March figure, £145 payment only. So furlough is definitely coming across as the better option at this moment in time, certainly around retention of employees.
Yep, absolutely. But one of the questions that has been asked quite a few times now is, you know, we've had employees that have been off self-isolating because of symptoms that they've maybe had because of the virus. What precautions should I take as an employer when I'm bringing in an employee back to work after maybe that 7 or 14-day period?
Yeah, so probably, you know, good practice anyway is to make sure that the return to work interview is done properly, and obviously try and comply with the social distancing kind of rules around that. So our advice would be to probably do something over the telephone the day before they're due back, rather than kind of coming in if they've still got symptoms and still not feeling well. So do something over the telephone in the first instance, and providing that goes okay, then that's fine. But ask the question then, what other support do they think they need to kind of come back to work? And then when they are back, kind of do that whole return to work interview, welcome them back, just make sure the social distancing's in place, you know, talk through the kind of hygiene and the different kind of things they've put in place in the business. So, you know, that would be the kind of key thing for me, and just reassure the other colleagues that you've kind of done that as well, because they might be a bit nervous about someone coming back and kind of passing that on. So I think just communicating with the rest of the team, that's the steps that you've put in place, that kind of keeps that fairly positive.
The other question that we have been asked recently is around training. So we're looking at training our employees during this period of furlough. What is reasonable? What can we ask them to do? Is it, you know, mainly online webinars, or, you know, what is reasonable training?
Again, during the period of furlough, employees can be asked to undertake training. The thing to bear in mind there would be, if they were going to be doing the appropriate period of training, that if there was going to be a payments made, it should be the national minimum wage should be paid for any training undertaken. Again, if you're looking at what's reasonable, we've had instances where some clients are taking the view that perhaps a whole day should be filled up with training. The approach should be looked at in that if you're going to be measuring training, that the training should be given, and perhaps objectives given, objectives set, regularly reviewed with the employee during the period of absence, checking in to see how this training is taking place. What training shouldn't be done, it shouldn't have been guised up in that it's actually an opportunity for work to be taken for the employee. It shouldn't be anything that would be income producing for the employee. Again, on training from our side, we are running a number of webinars, details of which will be available on our website and which will be communicated out regularly through our websites and our newsletters.
Okay. Yeah. And I think there's lots of kind of online kind of resources out there. You know, we're obviously, you know, one of our clients is Ecom Scotland, so they've got some great online learning as well. So, and some of that they're kind of offering for free. So there's lots of stuff out there. So I think if you have got kind of staff on furlough, you know, I think one of the things that will kind of happen when the business reopens is you're going to be so focused on, you know, delivering the service for your customers, you're probably not going to take people off the business to do training. So now's a good time just to, you know, kind of, you know, make sure that's all in place. But as John said, webinars, even things like TED Talks, online training, there's loads of stuff out there. So I'd be inclined to kind of tailor that to suit the individual. And I guess if people are furloughed and sitting at home, they're probably quite happy to kind of break the day up a wee bit and jump onto something, you know, just a bit of training. You know, John did something for a client in Aberdeen earlier in the week. We've got a kind of weekly thing with them, and it's the management team, so they're all furloughed, but it's a good way to keep in contact and develop their skills as well. So you know, this kind of new world of technology, it's a great way to learn. But if you have kind of furloughed some of the team, is just look at things like their kind of most recent one-to-one, or where there's kind of gaps in the development, and just kind of tailor something to suit that individual, but be reasonable. Key thing to remember is that, you know, how you act as a leader of your business now is how you'll be remembered. And you know, if you're not being reasonable, then, you know, all that's going to happen is when the restrictions are lifted, you're probably going to lose some of your key staff, because they're going to remember that and kind of move on. So it's doing the right thing now, and you'll get the benefits of that kind of longer term. So that's probably just a bit of advice to give to any business owners there, is how you conduct yourself now and lead and inspire your teams a little bit is what you need to be doing.
Great. No, that's great. Thanks very much. So my last question that I've got for you today is, can I reduce the hours my employees are contracted to, and if so, how do I go about it?
Yeah, so you can reduce people's contracted hours, but you have to consult with them around that, because that's a contractual change to their employment. So you might have someone working, say, 5 days a week, and due to a kind of reduction of workload, you might, you know, be looking to reduce their hours, say, down from 5 days to 3 days. So you can't just impose that kind of unilaterally. There has to be some consultation around that, and just really getting the employees' agreement that they're happy to do so. What you can then do there is potentially agree it for a temporary period of time, and get the buy-in around it, and then obviously once restrictions are lifted, is commit to put them back to their contracted hours. Ultimately, what should normally happen is they would get contractual notice of any change. So if, for example, someone's been with you, say, 5 years, you would normally have 5 weeks notice to bring that change into play. But obviously with the current circumstances, you might look to get their agreement to kind of do that far sooner. The only thing to consider there is, obviously, if you are kind of reducing people's contracted hours or reducing their pay, then they wouldn't also then be eligible to be furloughed as well. So that's just a point of caution. We have had, obviously, some people looking to probably reduce pay and reduce hours, then furlough them. So that kind of goes against the kind of job retention scheme. So that's not something that you'd be able to do. But an answer to the question about reducing pay or reducing hours, then yeah, that is something you can do, providing you consult with the people on that properly.
Okay, perfect. So that's tied up most of our frequently asked questions, certainly, that we've got. So what we'll do on the back of this is we'll upload, like I mentioned, to the website, just giving them an up-to-date, and just in case you can't watch the video. But hopefully that's answered the questions in a bit more detail, with a bit more personality than the script that's on the website. But if you do have any other questions, then please feel free to comment below or send us an email. If you've got our personal emails, then you could send that there, or you could send it to advice@theHRBooth.co.uk. But thank you for watching.